My name is Monique Sampson. I'm with the Jacksonville Community Action Committee as well as Freedom Road Socialist Organization here to interview Loretta, who is with the Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar. I am so excited about all the things that we are going to get into today, but first, here's a little bit about me. So I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, and have been organizing here in the South for the last 3 years. I'm with the Jacksonville Community Action Committee as well as Freedom Road Socialist Organization here to interview Loretta. That one Saturday where we had over 3,500 people join us to demand justice for George Floyd and all other victims of police crimes here in Jacksonville. We had the largest march of Jacksonville history. We had a lot of people out there of all ages, all races demanding justice, demanding that our state attorney press charges against the killer cops here that we have, demand that our state attorney pressure Sheriff Mike Williams to release body cam, and the case of Jamie Johnson, who was a 22-year-old FAMU student shot at during a routine traffic stop. In addition to that, we had to organize a large-scale bond relief effort because after our protest was done, we had some people stay and they were arrested and brutalized by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. We were able to free almost 50 people so far whose bonds range anywhere from $750 to $77,000. So James gave the guy that had the bond of $77,000, they charged him with criminal mischief, 4 counts of that, and battery on a law enforcement officer, all because he jumped on a cop car. So it's a shame that he got that big of a bond as a 19-year-old kid, basically, when JSO gets paid when they murder us. So that's enough about me and the things that we've been doing. I want to get into talking about Loretta, who is an amazing person with the Twin Cities for Justice for Jamar. She's been organizing with them for a couple of years now. They organized against police crimes that happen in Minnesota, and they organize with families to demand justice and accountability. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Loretta, who can tell you a little bit more about herself.
Like Monique said, I've been with Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar for almost 5 years. Well, it'll be 5 years this November, which also would mark the anniversary of when Jamar Clark was murdered by the Minneapolis police. I have lived in Minneapolis almost all my life since the age of 7. And so I grew up in the area where the 3rd Precinct is as well. Also, I'm part of Freedom Road Socialist Organization, been with them for a few years as well. And we have been fighting for not only justice for Jamar's family, but for all the families who've lost loved ones to the police, and fighting for community control of the police as well. Also, I'm an educator, a mother, and yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Loretta. So just for those watching, the way that our program is going to go today is I have a few questions that I'm going to ask Loretta. I'm going to interview her. And then there's going to be a few questions in the chat that we're going to take. And it's going to be a great program. So let's go ahead and get into our first question. So Loretta, I know you've been in Minnesota, and Minnesota has been a great inspiration for us here in the South and all over the world, honestly, showing us what it looks like when people decide to fight back. So could you possibly give us like some details and a timeline of what led up to basically what we're seeing now, days and days of sustained protest against killer cops?
Well, Memorial Day, the video that probably everybody has seen of George Floyd getting the knee on his neck was circulated Monday night. A lot of people saw it. People were upset, as would be, and people were upset that, again, one more Black man in Minneapolis died at the hand of the police. So groups like Twin Cities Coalition for Justice for Jamar, Racial Justice Network, and a few other groups got together and decided to, I go back, people started going to Tuesday morning, people started going to the site 38th in Chicago where George Floyd was killed. And they, it's become a community space, like a altar almost to him. And so, but people started gathering there. And so it was decided that we would have a march from 38th in Chicago to the 3rd Precinct. It was peaceful, militant on the way there. We had people join us all the way there. It's a long way from, it's about maybe 3 or 4 miles from that spot to the 3rd Precinct. We gathered at the 3rd Precinct and chanted, "We're lively." People stayed when the official march was over. People stayed um, stayed behind, and that's when the cops started getting aggressive because windows were getting broken on the police station and that. And so that's when the cops started getting aggressive and tear gas, the rubber marker rounds or whatever they call them, started that night. And people just fought back with the police throwing back the tear gas, throwing things at the police station. The third precinct is not is like was a symbol for everybody. That's Lake Street's like the main thoroughfare in Minneapolis, and a lot of people have been harassed and by the police, have been brutalized by the police in that area, and I think people had had enough of that, as well as with what happened with George Floyd, and so that marked the first day of I guess you could say battle with the police. Um, and just kept going. People were angry and upset, and I think that's how that kicked it off with what you saw in Minneapolis.
Wow, that's so powerful. And like a lot of people here I know I was very disturbed with what I saw on that video and disturbed at the fact that this isn't the first time, this isn't the last time. And kind of what you said is very similar. People like to paint the protesters as the aggressors when in almost all cases we've seen that the police start harassing and agitating protesters by firing weapons of war like tear gas and bullets and all types of stuff at people that just want to speak out against police brutality. So thank you for telling us that timeline. So when it initially happened, it took them over 72 hours to charge the first cop. What do you think led to the arrest of the other three cops? Because it took them even longer to charge those other three cops who were accomplices in the murder. They just stood there and watched, you know?
I think what happened in Minneapolis, the sustained protest. We've been going to Mike Freeman's house. He's the county attorney for Hennepin County. We've protested in front of the Police Federation building. We've protested in front of um, numerous sites, and also at the third precinct and at the fifth precinct as well, which is another precinct that's notorious for a couple of police killings as well. Um, and I think just it's been just the added pressure of the power structure in Minneapolis that we've put on them to, and I think that's what led to the arrest. It took a long time, and people were even saying, this would stop if only you've arrested all four cops. And I think when Mike Freeman came out with the wimpy charges of third degree murder, I think people were like, that's not enough.
Right.
That we all saw what would be constituted as a first degree murder, and I think people were like, we that isn't enough. And I know there's still demand though that we keep protesting because it's far from over. Just because they're arrested doesn't mean we're going to be peaceful about it. It's far from over.
Exactly. And we need a conviction and we need a real punishment. A man lost his life. And
Yeah.
people treating, the lapdogs of the bourgeoisie, like certain parts of the media were treating a target like it was more important than a man that literally lost his life, than a
Mhm.
generation that is completely traumatized by seeing so many different police shootings and police killings. So, wow, that's powerful. So, we saw the rebellion. A lot of us were inspired by the rebellion. A lot of us were inspired by the people power and the sheer will of the people to fight back against a system that wants to keep them in chains. How do you think the rebellion led to all of these charges, led to inspiring all of these states?
Like I've said before, it's people. It was one more death, and it was one death too many. We had Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, Breonna Clark in Kentucky, Tony McDade, is
Yes.
it, in Florida, and and it's one death too many of Black folks, and I think enough was enough, and I think the whole country woke up to that, and being in the middle of a pandemic
Right.
that's also disproportionately killing Black folks. I
Right.
think people just enough was enough, and I think that's why it led to everyone to the all that they said there's been an action in all 50 states
State.
and including Puerto Rico, and it's gone global because people are like, we're fed up. How can you say you're the freest country in the world when when certain segments of your country aren't free? And so
Exactly.
I think this is the start of a rebellion of the start that it is a rebellion. It's the start of our liberation, I feel.
Exactly. National oppression is a real thing. I mean,
Mhm.
even internationally, my husband did an interview with ABC Australia where the Aboriginal people were looking to us for guidance and saying that we were inspiring them because they had an Aboriginal man die in the hands of Australian police custody in a similar manner.
Mhm.
So even they were protesting. I saw some Amish people protesting. I mean, George Floyd really, and it's sad that we have to say it like this, but he was a martyr. He was a martyr for our cause, and
Mhm.
now it's time for us to get him justice. So
Yeah.
a lot of media reports are talking about outside agents. I've seen like media reports about bricks being left, about cops actually going and breaking out windows. Have you noticed any agent provocateurs at you all's events?
I mean, I don't know if they're there, but I feel like that narrative takes away from the rage of the community. And if people are if there's outside agitators, that's always going to be a thing, right? But at the same time, that's been used even during the civil rights era um, to discourage people from fighting back. And so I feel like when they use the outside agitator narrative, it's really to keep people from fighting back. And so like the white they said it's white supremacists one day. They say it's drug cartel the other day. It's like, make up your mind.
Exactly.
It really is just the rage of the community saying enough's enough.
Right.
And it's like people have been saying, buildings can be replaced, windows can be replaced, but not a life. And so I think the outside agitator is just another way to distract us from what the real goal is our liberation and our freedom.
Exactly. And I think people would rather, say that than deal with the own rage of their own people without they'd rather do that than deal with their own systemic failures, than deal with the failures that capitalism has brought us, with the fact that
Yep.
more black folks are so it's like more black folks are disproportionately affected by COVID, and you're gonna murder us in the streets while someone's recording? No.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable. So beautiful answers to that question. Another question. So, what are the central demands of the Minneapolis freedom fighters right now?
Well, there are plenty. I know with our group, of course, is community control of the police.
Right.
A lot of groups are for actually, as we speak, the city council is meeting talking about dismantling and restructuring the police.
Right.
Um, you know, there's also been calls for the University of Minnesota, the Twin Cities campus just divested. I work for Minneapolis Public Schools, and they just Tuesday voted not to end their contract with the Minneapolis police. So I think we're seeing is kind of the domino effect of the demands. We've been going for years to these people and saying, look, the way the way things are not working. The way you handle when police kill someone or even when they just brutalize and beat someone is not working. And so I think now, I mean, it shouldn't have taken the city burning down for them to do it, but it's now they're paying attention. And so the hope is that there's a new, I don't want to say system, because what needs to really happen is capitalism needs to go away, because I don't think it's going to be 100% um, what people are going to envision. But if the only way you can abolish the police, abolish it, is to get rid of capitalism. But
Right.
I think we're starting to see some of the first steps of you know policing in a different way.
Right. Right. So you mentioned something called community control of the police. Can you tell our viewers what that is and what that entails?
Well, that would be people like you, people like me, we're making those decisions of how we're policed in our community, or how police operate in our community, I should say. We, hiring, firing, budgets, all that's in the hands of the community, not some rubber stamp civilian review board that does nothing.
Right.
It's going to be actual people from the community saying what their community needs as far as safety and all that, versus and and who gets to be in our community in that as well.
Right. So it's different than a civilian review board, because it sounds like you actually have the teeth to bite back and the power to
Mm-hmm.
back.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not mistaken, are civilian review boards, do they do anything? Are they effective?
In Minneapolis, they've never been really effective. They had a civilian review board. They got rid of it. They brought it back, but it had less teeth and really was just a rubber stamp. Somebody would come and say, Officer so and so did this, or Officer so and so killed my family member. And like, oh, and they just shrug. And meanwhile, that officer is back on the street. Derek Chauvin, who killed George Floyd, has killed 3 times before. And so, with the community control of the police, we wouldn't have Derek Chauvin. He would not only not be on the force, he would probably look for him to lose his law enforcement license as well.
That's powerful. So how can people outside of Minnesota, outside of just anywhere, how can we help all over the country, all over the world? How can people help aid in the fight for justice and for community control of the police?
I keep doing what you're doing. I'm looking at New York, Atlanta, DC, Jacksonville, everywhere. Just keep doing what you're doing, because it's there. The demands are there, and I mean, there's, you got your city council and your mayors probably saying these things, like, oh, we'll look at it and stuff, but you got to really continue to keep pressure on the people and show them what community looks like. I love what's going on in Minneapolis as far as the community. So the 2 major stores in that area got damaged, whatever you want to call it, and community's been stepping up and making sure people get food, get diapers, all that stuff. And so I'm like, we're kind of leading the way of how, like, we can do this without the police help. We can make sure that our people are fed. We can make sure our people are getting the help they need. And so I think in Minneapolis we're showing the world that this is how it can be done.
Exactly. So just saying community. So we know that all 4 cops have been charged. So why should folks keep protesting? Why should folks keep coming out and showing out?
Because in Minneapolis, all but 1 cop has been convicted of killing somebody. And that was because it was a Black cop and a white woman.
Right.
And so I think to keep protesting, we need the conviction. We need them in jail. They don't need to be in the streets anymore. And I think the protests need to continue and sustain, because we can't get justice unless everyone gets justice.
Right, exactly. So then, with that being said, what should the next organizing steps be? What do you think folks should organize for now? All of the cops have been charged.
They should organize, of course, around community control, around that, but also organize their communities to how does that look like? How does that look like? And that. So of course, it's organizing around community control. It's organizing around a world where policing may hopefully look different, right?
So as socialists, what is our role in this movement then?
Is we got to keep fighting, keep demanding, keep educating that there's a different way forward, and that that we're looking at what we're looking at really is the last gasp of capitalism. And so like years we were like, yeah, it may happen, but I feel like it can happen now with all that's going on in the country and around the world too.
Right. So we know that people kept bringing up the Target was brought up a lot of different times. So one of the questions was, after the Target burnt down, there were pictures of the community actually coming together and helping people, just like you said. How's the community rebuilding?
Um, in that way, they're coming together, making sure people have food, have the resources they need. Um, I think I've seen a lot of GoFundMe's for some of the small businesses. There have been along Lake Street, there's a lot of businesses owned by immigrant families. And so there's been a lot of GoFundMe's for that. There's been a lot of what they call mutual aid, where people are organizing, getting a ride to pharmacies that are outside the area so that people can get their medication, making sure people have diapers and formula and all the stuff they need. And so I think we're seeing how community is coming together despite not having those two corporate stores there. People have been coming from outside the Twin Cities area with donations and that. So
That's powerful. So we're down to our last few questions. So what has been the community's reaction to y'all's protests? Have they been overwhelmingly supportive, overwhelmingly not supportive?
it's been supportive, actually. Um, it's been supportive. I know there's a lot of anxiety in those communities because of the fires and everything. And so uh, people were organizing defense of their communities, but a lot of people had to be reminded, if you do that, you're also kind of doing that, deterring young folks and stuff from being able to escape if cops are after them and stuff. So it's been a lot of educating as well with the community about why this is happening.
Awesome.
And so yeah, but it's been overwhelmingly positive support in most of the communities, even the communities where it's happened. A lot of people are like, that, like I said, that Target can always be replaced. George Floyd's life can't. So a
Exactly.
lot of people have looked at it at that lens too.
So then our last question for today is going to be, what is some advice that you can give somebody that has never organized anything before but wants to be more involved?
Find a group. Find. There's so many organizations. You can find their Facebook page if it aligns with what you believe in. Join them. Ask them how you can be involved. Also, just I just show up. That's all you gotta do is just show up. I just tell that's when people ask me that, just show up, because showing up is half the battle. It's after that, it's doing the work. If it aligns with your values, I say just join that group and do the work.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Loretta, for giving us, some eyes and ears on the front line and sharing what is really going on, where all of this originated, sharing what happened in the city that sparked all of these different protests and movements around the country. So I'm definitely very grateful for you sharing and taking your Friday and sharing with us. So unless there's any more questions, we're going to go ahead and end it here. And again, thank you so much, Loretta, for everything.
All right, thank you.
Take care now.
All right, justice for George Floyd.
Yes, justice for George Floyd.
Yeah.